Welcome back to Master 79. In this lesson we're working through ielts speaking topic 38. Describe a time when you taught a friend or relative something. We'll cover the 1 minute of planning, a full band 9 model long turn, and all 4 part 3 questions. 2 honest notes before we start. Band 9 here is our own assessment against the public ielts band descriptors. It is not a certified examiner score, and the candidate Trang is invented for teaching purposes. Copy the technique, not the story. Here's the plan. First, what part 2 actually asks of you. Then the cue card itself, exactly as it was given to us. Then the planning method, the model answer in 4 pieces, and the full transcript. After that, all 4 part 3 questions, each with a short planning cue and a complete answer. We finish with a language bank and a challenge for you. Part 2 is the long turn. The examiner hands you a card, gives you 1 minute to prepare with paper and pencil, and then you speak alone for 1 to 2 minutes. 2 things matter enormously here. First, the examiner will not rescue you. If you stop at 40 seconds, that silence is your score. Second, the 4 bullets on the card are not suggestions. They are the structure. Answer them in order and your coherence mark takes care of itself. Here is the card, reproduced exactly. Describe a time when you taught a friend or relative something. You should say who you taught, what you taught, how the result was, and explain how you felt about the experience. One thing worth flagging. The 3rd bullet on this card reads how the result was. Official Cambridge cards normally phrase that as what the result was. We're showing you the card exactly as it was given rather than quietly correcting it, because in a real test you may well be handed something awkwardly worded. Listen for how the model answer handles it. The candidate repeats the card's own phrasing and flags it lightly, which sounds far more confident than pretending the wording is normal. Now, the 1 minute. Most candidates waste it writing sentences they then read aloud, which is the fastest way to sound rehearsed. Here's what to do instead. Write the 4 bullets down the page as headings. Give each heading 2 or 3 keywords only, and prefer concrete nouns. A place, an age, an object, a number. Spend your last 10 seconds on the feelings bullet, because that's the one candidates run out of time for, and it's where your best language lives. And choose a story with a problem in it. A story where everything went smoothly leaves you nothing to say. This is what Trang's paper looked like after her minute. 12 words in total. Grandma 78 Nam Din. Video calls, and crucially, the real problem was the gesture, not the app. Then the method and the time scale, and 1 proof it worked. And finally 2 feelings, frustrated and humbled. Notice there is not 1 complete sentence on this page. That is deliberate. Before you hear it, here's the shape to listen for. Who? Name the person, their age, and 1 detail that makes them real. What? Say the skill, then say what the real difficulty was. Result. Method, time scale, and 1 concrete proof. Feelings. 2 feelings, not 1, and show the change between them. Here is the full long turn, in 4 pieces so you can see how each one maps onto a bullet. Listen once for the story, then again for the language.
I'd like to talk about the time I taught my grandmother, who's 78 and lies in London, how to make video calls. She'd had a smartphone for about a year at that point, but she treated it almost exclusively as a device for receiving calls. Everything else on the screen was, in her words, decoration. What I actually taught her was Zalo, which is the messaging app almost everyone in Vietnam uses. Now, on the face of it, that sounds trivial, but the real obstacle wasn't the app at all. It was a gesture. She'd been pressing and holding the screen the way you'd press a physical button, so nothing ever responded, and she concluded that the phone simply didn't like her. Survey broke the whole thing down into 3 steps and nothing more. Unlock, tap the blue icon, tap the green camera. I wrote those 3 steps on a card in coloured marker and stuck it to her fridge, and we practiced at the same time every evening for about 10 minutes for a fortnight. As for how the result was, and I'm using the wording on the card here, it exceeded anything I'd expected. Within a month, she wasn't just answering calls, she was initiating them, and she'd started video calling her younger sister in Australia every Sunday morning. How did I feel about it? Initially, if I'm honest, quite frustrated. There was a stretch in the first week where my patience wore thin and I had to physically sit on my hands to stop myself grabbing the phone off her. But by the end, I felt something closer to humbled. I'd always assumed that teaching was about explaining clearly, and it turned out it was almost entirely about pacing, about resisting the urge to move faster than the person in front of you. That stayed with me far longer than the lesson stayed with her.
There's the complete answer on one screen. Pause here and read it properly. The measured length is on screen and it sits comfortably inside the 1 to 2 minute window without rushing. So why do we call this a Band 9 answer? Fluency and coherence. It runs to length without hesitation, and every chunk answers a specific bullet in order. Lexical resource. Precise, unshowy collocation, rather than memorized big words. Grammatical range. Past perfect, cleft sentences, and relative clauses used naturally rather than displayed. And pronunciation, which is judged on your live delivery, not on the script. That fourth one you have to test yourself. And again, this is our assessment against the public descriptors, not a certified examiner score. Now part 3. This is a 4 to 5 minute discussion, and the questions move away from you personally towards society in general. The examiner will push back, ask why, and ask for the other side. Answers of around 40 to 60 seconds are ideal. 1 or 2 sentences is too short, and a 2-minute speech is the wrong register entirely. For each question, we'll show you a quick planning cue first, then the full answer. Question 1. What practical skills can young people teach old people? Give the obvious answer in 1 line. Don't pretend it isn't obvious. Then say which one actually matters most and why. And land it on a consequence, not another example.
The obvious ones are digital. How to use a banking app, how to spot a scam message, how to book an appointment online. But I'd argue the most valuable ones are slightly less obvious. Things like navigating a bureaucratic website or knowing which parts of the internet to distrust. My grandmother could always read. What she couldn't do was tell a genuine bank notification from a fraudulent one. And that's a practical skill with real financial consequences, not just a convenience.
Question 2. What skills can young people teach old people besides technology? The examiner has just ruled out your easiest answer. Say so briefly, then move on. Aim for 3 different domains, not 3 examples of the same one, and finish on the least predictable.
Quite a lot, actually. Younger people tend to be much better informed about nutrition and exercise science simply because the information has changed enormously in 1 generation. Languages are another. A lot of older people in Vietnam never had the opportunity to learn English formally. And then there's something harder to name, which is a vocabulary for talking about mental health. My generation grew up with words like burnout and boundaries. My grandparents' generation had the experiences, but not the language for them.
Question 3. How can young people teach old people skills? A how question wants a method, not an opinion. Use your part 2 story as evidence. That's allowed and it's efficient. Name the common mistake, then give the fix.
Patiently and in far smaller steps than feels necessary. The mistake I made initially was demonstrating the whole sequence at speed, which looks efficient, but the learner comes away having watched something rather than done it. What worked was handing over the device immediately and letting her make the mistakes herself. I'd also say the format matters. A written cue card that stays on the fridge outlasts any amount of verbal explanation because it's there at the moment they actually need it when I'm not.
Question 4. How can we know what to do when we want to learn something new? This one is abstract, and it's fine to admit the answer is uncertain. Contrast two approaches, say when each one wins, and add a second idea the examiner won't have expected.
I think the honest answer is that we often don't, and the useful first move is simply to find someone who's already done it. Structured courses are excellent for subjects with a fixed body of knowledge, but for practical skills, I'd trust an experienced practitioner over a syllabus every time. The other thing I'd say is that it's worth deciding early what level you're actually aiming for. A lot of people abandon things not because they're bad at them, but because they unconsciously benchmark themselves against experts from day one.
Here's the language worth stealing from that answer. Notice how ordinary most of it is. On the face of it. My patience wore thin. I had to sit on my hands. Quite a lot, actually. None of these are difficult words. They are simply the right words, used at the right moment, and that is what separates Band 7 from Band 9 far more often than vocabulary size does. Four things to avoid on this card specifically. Listing instead of telling. Answering all 4 bullets in 10 seconds and then falling silent. Choosing a story with no problem in it. Reaching for memorized idioms where one misplaced idiom costs you more than 4 plain sentences gain. And skipping the feelings bullet, which is the last line on the card and the first thing candidates drop. Here's your challenge. Record yourself answering this card in 2 minutes with no script. Play it back and mark every silence longer than 2 seconds. Then rebuild only the bullet where those silences clustered, not the whole answer. That is the fastest way to improve a long turn. If this helped, subscribe to Master 79 and I'll see you in the next lesson.